Australia's zoos and aquariums have 20 million visitors a year, many of them from overseas, which is why this is being this initiative. We're partnering with Simon Birmingham, Trade Minister, because we know that our zoos, we showcase Australia through our exhibits and the way we manage our animals, but they're also conservation parks and conservation organisations. So behind the scenes, there's so much going on that, for example, following the bushfires is rescuing our precious wildlife, breeding it in a safe place, ready for a return to unburnt zones. So, and it's clear, isn't it, that when you put your business in a holding pattern, when you've got animals, you have to keep feeding them, and the costs are absolutely astronomical to feed these animals, look after them and keep them in tip-top condition.
Yeah, we've been reading about how much red meat, for example, lions eat each week and the cost of that. The eligibility is always a key question. So how will that work? Will all wildlife parks, zoos, etc. be eligible? Is there a certain lack of turnover they need to prove? I mean, they're all closed at the moment, presumably.
Well, they are. Austrade is working with the Zoos and Aquariums Association, which represents the more than 150 zoos and aquariums, which will be eligible, and the guidelines will be expected soon. But clearly they'll be related to the feed bill, the huge cost of feeding animals. And the government can't underwrite it all, but we can certainly help, as we are doing across the economy more broadly. And JobKeeper has helped these organisations. But again, the business can't go into a complete hibernation because we have to look after the animals and we have to recognise the vital work that they do. Many people are familiar, Tom, with Mogo Zoo on the South Coast. They had a little baby zebra calf born on Anzac Day. They're called Poppy, and they're doing well, but they're looking forward to visitors. They're looking forward to opening.
So this package, you say it is being worked on between the different zoos and so on, and they'll be able to present their feeding bill. Does it mean none of them are going to shut down during this period, or can you not offer that guarantee?
Well, they are shut down to visitors because of the social distancing requirements, but they're already thinking about how, when they do open up, they can have those distancing provisions in place so we can get some people in. We won't have a line up 10 deep outside the enclosures, for example, but we'll that they will.
So I should clarify, I meant that none of them will go under during the coronavirus period.
Well, I hope not. Some are well known and they've got lots of cash or some cash perhaps to fall back on, and some are supported by state governments. But there are smaller wildlife parks and they're just as important. So that's why we worked with the Zoos and Aquariums Association to make sure that we understand the needs and that we can design the guidelines appropriately. So the money will come in April, May, June in one payment, and then the first quarter of next financial year in another. So it is timely and it will make a difference.
Having seen some of the zoos around the world, I think a few countries do it better than Australia, so a big part of tourism. On the other hand, you've got this threat from the Chinese ambassador yesterday around Chinese tourists. How much of a worry is that?
We want all of Australia to be opened up to tourists from all over the world because we have so much to see and so much to exhibit, whether it be zoos or whether it be our World Heritage Areas, the Great Barrier Reef, our national parks. We have an extraordinary continent. So I don't want to get into arguments. I don't want to, look for reasons why people should or shouldn't visit. Everyone should.
All right, but you'd have to be a bit concerned about the comments that apparently the Chinese people won't like if Australia's pushing for an inquiry into COVID-19 and perhaps their tourists will be strongly encouraged not to come here.
Look, I think we'll see how that plays out. We've always been so well supported by Chinese tourists, and indeed our Chinese Australians are great advocates for everything that this country has to offer.
All right, and just finally on green tape, I know you've spoken a bit about how things will look as we try to get out of the economic slump of COVID-19, but not wanting at the same time to obviously damage the environment unnecessarily, keep protections in place. What's an example, you're already looking into this, of unnecessary green tape, steps that can just be removed that are holding up the process for no good reason?
The legislation itself is 1,600 pages. It's too long. It hasn't been properly reviewed in 20 years. It's the centrepiece of our environmental law, and it needs to be fit for now and for the future. but it also locks in environmental protections. And I want to make that clear. This isn't about skirting around the key matters of national environmental significance that the Act protects. But the average approval, if you get there, because we go through assessment, not everything is approved. And when it is, there's a set of conditions attached. And, you know, there's a lot of consultation about them. It takes 3.5 years. That's too long. So we know that projects that can add jobs, particularly to regional areas, that can add income to Australia's national accounts, that mean a lot for our various sectors and our communities, are being unnecessarily delayed. So front and centre of this review is how we get rid of the process for process's sake that is just taking too long.
So would it be fair to say that your aim is to cut the time? You wouldn't necessarily change the rules around what gets approved and what doesn't, just make it all happen more quickly?
Well, everything is done on a case-by-case basis, so there isn't a one-size-fits-all. But what we can do is work in a bilateral way with the states, and we are doing that already with agreements with New South Wales and WA, which means that we're not duplicating the work that state governments do, because they also have environmental approval eyes on new projects. So that's a key thing. And doing what we call strategic assessments, which mean the whole region gets assessed so everybody can plug into baseline data on species or the environment. So again, it's duplication and process for process's sake, which is really cumbersome, and it's a deadweight loss to the economy.